Welcome back, Synthwaver. Alonso here from synthwavedojo.com. When I'm composing and producing synthwave, I like to have certain information readily available so I don't have to go online hunting for it and stop my workflow. I mean stuff like chords, scales, keys, etc. This is why I put together a very handy reference book called Synthwave Composer Tools. Let me walk you through its contents and show you how you can use it in your synthwave making endeavors starting today. Let's do this. Alright, so let's cover the content. So here's our very interesting table of contents, and one thing I want to mention is that I will continue adding to it and editing, so keep coming back to the download section in the website and look for the most updated version. Right now it's at version 1.3, dated July 19th, 2023. The first thing we're going to find are scales. In this chart we can see all the major scales. So on the left hand side on this first column we'll find the note that gives the scale its name, the major scale, and to the right you will see all the notes that are part of that particular scale. Okay, so for example, in the scale of C major, we have the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Here at the top, we can see the scale degrees, 1 through 7, and the W's and the H, they are to show you what the particular sequence of whole tones and half tones is for the major scale. So the sequence for major scale is whole tone, half tone, whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, half tone, or whole half, whole half. Then we have the pentatonic major scales chart. Just like the major scales chart that we just covered, on the left hand side we're gonna see the name of the scale, and to the right the degrees. In here you'll notice that we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and why is that? These degrees correspond to the degree in the major scale from which the note comes. So the C major pentatonic scale is comprised of the notes C, D, E, G, and A, and these are the degrees 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 from the major scale. For example, you can see it here. C is the 1, D is the 2nd, E is the 3rd, G is the 5th, and A is the 6th. In other words, in the pentatonic major scale, we're leaving out the 4th and the 7th degrees. Then we have the minor scales. The same deal, but just notice that the sequence of whole tones and half tones is different than the major scale. Obviously, otherwise they would sound the same, which they don't. And the sequence of whole tones and half tones in the minor scale is whole, half, whole, half, whole. Great. Now let's take a look at the pentatonic minor scales. Same deal as the other charts that we covered. On the first column to the left, we have the note that gives name to the scale, and then we have the notes in the scale. In C minor pentatonic, we have C, E flat, F, G, and B flat. And these numbers are the degrees to which each note correspond in the full minor scale. Now, these next charts are super useful, and here we'll find all the chords in all major keys and minor keys. Well, almost all, because there are certain keys that contain notes and chords that have double flats or double sharps, which is more a theoretic thing than in what you would see in actual application of music. So that's why some of those keys have been left out. But you will see here 12 or 14 of the most popular keys that you can use. First column, we see the name of the key, and to the right, we're going to find all the chords for that particular key. So starting with C major, the first chord is C, then D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and B diminished. These correspond to the Roman numerals, which is super useful. You can look up Roman numeral analysis. I want to call out that this column is highlighted in blue with an asterisk because this is the relative minor chord or the relative minor key, which means that in the key of C major we have all these chords, but the key of A minor shares all the same chords but starting from a different position. Great. Now the chords in all minor keys, for example C minor, we have the chords C minor, D diminished, E flat major, F minor, G minor, A flat major, and B flat major. At the top you'll see the Roman numerals, which are different than the major scale. And the third column is highlighted in blue because this degree or this chord is the relative major. The same thing that I explained with the relative minor. If we take the C minor key and start from E flat, what we'll get is the E flat major key. They both share the same notes and chords. Then we have the chord leading charts, which I explained in a recent video called Chord Progressions Deep Dive or something like that. So I'm not going to explain them, but you can refer to that video, which I have put here at the bottom. Triad over root is also a very useful concept that also I'm not going to go into detail because I've made a couple of videos about that, which I have detailed here and here. Chord progression archetypes, I also touched upon this in the chord progressions deep dive. Then we get to the cadences, which I am going to explain at least briefly. So cadences in Western musical theory is how you end a phrase and start the next one or the next section. It's how you resolve a phrase or a section. And specifically is the chord that you use to end that phrase or that section and the next chord that comes after it. Depending on what chords you use to end one section and start the next one, that resolution can be considered weak or strong or confusing. And the cadences are specifically used for that. Each cadence will give the resolution a feeling of it being strong or weak. Even though there are many cadences, I'm going to cover the most important 3 or 4, I guess. 4. And they are the authentic or perfect cadence. And this is when you end a chord progression with the 5 chord before going back to the 1. So in this case, we have a progression going from C major to A minor to F major to G major. The end of the progression is G, and the next chord in the next section or in the progression would be C. So going from G to C is considered a perfect or an authentic cadence because we're going from the dominant chord 5, in this case G, to the root chord or to the tonic, which is the 1 chord here. And in Western music, this is the cadence that gives a very strong feeling of resolution, of firmly establishing C or the 1 chord as the tonic in the progression or in the music. Then we have the plagal cadence, which is going from the 4th chord to the 1. So here in this example, we have C major chord going to A minor, going to D minor, and then going to F. So F is the 4th chord in the key, and when we go back to C for the next round of this chord progression, this is considered the plagal cadence, and it is less strong than using an authentic or perfect cadence. Then we have the half cadence or imperfect cadence. We have an example, and it is when you go from the 4 chord to the 5 chord. Our ears, once they hear the 4 chord or the 5 chord, they expect the progression or the music will go to the 1 chord. But in this case, in the half or imperfect cadence, since we go from the 4 chord to the 5 chord, to us, to our ears, it feels like, oh, something weird happened here. That was kind of unexpected. So this is a half or imperfect cadence. Then the deceptive or interrupted is the weakest of the ones that we've already covered. And again, it tricks our ear into believing another chord is coming, but in reality, it doesn't. The deceptive or interrupted cadence is when you use the 5 chord to end your phrase, your progression, and instead of going back to the 1, you go back, or you go to A minor, or the 6th chord rather. Okay, so if we have a progression that starts like this, A minor, D minor, F, and G, by this time our ears will expect the music to go back to, or to go to C major as the tonic of the key, but we go to A minor, so that's where we feel the cadence being interrupted or deceptive. Our ears were fooled into believing we would go to C major, but we didn't. You can read more on cadences here, and I'm gonna go into more depth about how to use cadences in a future video. I'm also going to add modes and harmonic rhythm sometime in the future, so keep your eyes and ears open for that. And finally, as additional resources, I have pointed to 2 websites, one including a delay and reverb time calculator, and another one with a music duration calculator, and right now I'm going to show you how we can use those. This is the delay and reverb time calculator tool or website. What you do is you simply enter here the tempo of your track, and the website will show you different times in milliseconds for different stuff. For example, here we see the reverb size, a hall, if it were to last for 2 bars, or if you wanted a whole reverb to last for 2 bars. And considering you give it a pre-delay of 62.5 milliseconds, it means that we need to set the decay time to this value, so all in all, it adds up to 4,000 milliseconds or 4 seconds. And the same thing with, for example, large room reverb that's supposed to last for 1 bar, or small room that's supposed to last for a half note. If we scroll down, we'll find the delay time calculator, which I think it's a little bit more useful than the reverb time. Most modern reverbs will have a sync function that if you activate it, then the time of the delay will be showed in subdivisions of your meter. For example, a bar, quarter note, 16th note, or whatever. But sometimes, maybe you have a delay that doesn't have that, or as a special effect, you want a delay that's almost, let's say a quarter note, but not quite, a little shorter or a little longer. That's why you would disengage the sync function in your delay, and you would need to calculate the values manually. So you'd come to this website, assuming that the tempo of your track is 120. We would look up here under note value, a quarter note, and this would give us 500 milliseconds with time perfectly against a quarter note. And if we wanted our delay to be just a little shorter, then we could use 480 or 450, we'd have to tweak it by ear. And if we wanted it to be just a little longer for a certain effect, then we would use 520, 550, or whatever. And here you will also find the values for a dotted feel or for a triplet feel. Now I want to show you the music duration calculator. Say for example, you are writing a track and you have your main stack or your main idea, 8 bars, and it's in 4/4. The tempo is 112 BPM. And you ask yourself, if I wanted to turn this into full-length arrangement, 3.5 minutes or so of music, how many bars would my arrangement need? Again, I know that it's in 4/4 and the tempo is 112. Well, with this tool, we're going to enter here a number of bars and see what length in minutes and seconds that would give us. Typically, if you enter 100 bars, it's going to be right around the 3-minute or so mark. Great. So at a tempo of 112 BPM, if we write 100 bars of music, that's going to add up to 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Great. So right now I can plan my arrangement. I know that if I wanted to start with an intro of 16 bars and end the outro with 16 bars, 16 plus 16, that's 32. So if my target is 100 bars of music minus those 32, that's what? 68 bars? Okay, then I can plan and map out what I'm going to do with those 68 bars and how I'm going to subdivide them into an arrangement that makes sense. And there you have it, Synthwaver. I hope you put this ebook to great use and produce many tracks with it. Remember to download your copy from synthwavedojo.com/downloads. keep synth waving.